The opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Return the Jewels. Also, there's explicit language. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 24 of Return the Jewels. So this was a weird one. I've been kind of like wondering about the direction of this podcast and what it is. Not that I'm going to stop it, but we decided that after episode 25, we're going to take a break for a bit to redesign everything. I want to reformat really how we do this thing because I feel like the idea itself or like the brand or whatever um, lends itself to a bigger and more nuanced discussion than we've been having here. And perhaps I'm doing a disservice to what the idea itself was originally. And, kind of talk about it on this, in this interview. It was a whimsical recording because, we got this one and the next week, and then we're taking that break for a little bit. But it's kind of a whimsical recording, and I can always count on one of my really good friends, Danish Maqbool. He was on an earlier episode in season 1, and we FaceTime all the time, so we just figured, why not just put one of these conversations on wax? I know it's not really wax; it's Zoom, but so we did that, and it got really kind of cryptic and very obscure. It's just a long interview conversation that's just couched in obscurity and axioms, and maybe it's incoherent. I don't know. Hopefully you can get some value out of it. Hopefully. um but I don't want to detract from I don't want to talk it down and detract, because I do think we touched on a lot of important things. So, I had my friend Danish Maqbool on. He's a comedian. He's an actor. He was on that show Rami. He has got his own podcast. He's bringing back. He's gonna redesign it. It's called the DMAC Hour. At DMAC1 on social media and everything. You can see his stand up clips and everything. He's really good. Um, and young dude, he's my friend. We talk a lot about this shit, and it's just a really weird episode. I really don't know what to say in this intro. We talked like narrative crafting, confidence, ego, uh, purpose. I don't know. Just what should I don't know. Danish Maqbool, episode 24. Enjoy. All right. And so here we got Danish Maqbool. Yeah, there he is. Welcome. Welcome. See,
What's up, man?
we're coming to you from the new virtual studio, which is actually just two remote locations that are completely separate. And Danish just walked in through a door. So really, it's the exact same setup we've had for now the last 23 episodes. We had Danish on like episode 4 or 5, 6, maybe 9. I could be looking at the YouTube channel right now and tell you exactly what episode you were on, but nah, I really can't remember off the top of my head. It was a fun one. So
Nice.
yeah, what was it? It was something about confidence. Confidence is key.
Yeah, I remember it being a fun talk for
Yeah,
sure.
can't remember.
Had me
Like that
thinking
was
for a day.
it was.
Then somebody hit me up about it too.
What about after watching the episode?
Yeah, they were just like, "Yo, I enjoyed this talk," which I thought was really cool. Because I know you mentioned it's like, oh, not even that many people watch, but I guess the
Yeah.
people that are watching are pretty engaged.
Yo, it
You
must have
know?
been one of my cousins or something.
I don't know. I don't think it was. It wasn't a brown guy, so I don't think so.
What?
Yeah, it wasn't a brown guy.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
that's surprising to know because
Yeah, it was
boy, the
cool.
view count on this is bad. I just like
Well,
I'm
whatever. I
starting
think
to
it
think,
gets out. Whoever's watching it obviously is engaged.
yeah,
If
but I
10% of
wonder
your audience is reaching out to the guest,
10% is generous.
that's
One
that's
person reached
pretty.
out to you, that's at least 50% of our audience.
If 50% of your audience is that engaged, you know.
Maybe it was my mom. It must have been my mom. No, man, it's yeah, the view. Like sometimes I wonder if this whole thing is just an exercise in delusion. You know, what was this? We started this podcast a few months ago, and the height of the pandemic, still in the pandemic. No views, no real marketing campaign or anything. I mean, personally, I guess I get catharsis out of these conversations. They do
Yeah,
make
I'm
me
sure.
think, so I can assume that they make other people think. You know,
Well, I actually read a cool stat the other day about Twitch,
yeah.
and it probably relates to podcasting a little bit. But if you have like over 11 viewers on Twitch, you're in the top 3%.
Wow.
Yeah. You would think that, you
Yeah, there's
wouldn't be.
something like that with the podcast. It's like if you have over 100 subscribers, you're top 10% already.
Yeah. So, sometimes we beat ourselves up over the numbers because I think there's a
Also,
big,
though, I feel like that's a statistic that network executives try to use to lowball new acquisitions to coming on, being like, "Hey, you're part of the top 10%." So it's just like perspective work to make you.
well, not lowball. I think it would only make you raise your value if you're a guy that's on the fringe or a girl that's on the fringe or just a person on the fringe of this top 10.
Yeah.
Then you're like, yo, I have a top 10% podcast. I understand it's going to keep growing, right?
But
So,
I wonder though, like, is that like what is that value, right? Like if I'm chasing likes, if I'm chasing views, you know, 100 views can give me a huge hit of dopamine, but then I have the huge lack of dopamine from realizing that 100 views isn't 1,000 views, and then 1,000 views isn't 100,000 views, and so forth. So like that whole thing is that an exercise in frustration, like how this whole podcast is an exercise in delusion, you know?
no, I don't think so. I think, it's obviously a rat race. You always want to move up, 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 up.
But to what end?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like life in America almost. So you find your balance within that because otherwise, you're right. You would never stop. But I think it's just like good information to provide to people to let them know, hey, you're not as far off from the top as you would think, right? Like if you have a small audience, that's actually a lot more than what most creators have. And I think as a creator, you forget that. And it's easy to forget that because most of your other friends are creators and they have bigger audiences than you or smaller, they're just very,
No,
all
all
you're
my
seeing.
friends have bigger audiences than me. That's like
Yeah,
they're all
yeah. In your case,
creators.
bigger audiences than you. And honestly, it's pretty much most of my friends have bigger
Yeah.
audience than me. So, and then I
Eh,
see ones with the smaller audience too. And it gives me perspective when you see somebody with a smaller audience that you're like, well, I value this person more than somebody that has a bigger audience than me. You
yeah.
know,
I mean,
that kind of changes.
I've been thinking a lot. Like I think a lot about like value, right? And the value of this whole thing. And like is everything this whole thing started out, right? Because okay, you're a comedian. We hang out all the time. I'm not a comedian. I'm friends with a lot of comedians, right? And there's that whole thing. And I say it all the time when we talk. It's like, sure, you're in a profession where you naturally have some sort of impulse to, you know, share your opinion with strangers. So if you have that impulse, don't you have a responsibility to have an opinion worth sharing, right? Like what makes you worth listening to, and me or I, like probably most other people, feel like, yeah, well, th- there's some my opinion doesn't really matter outside of me, the person, unless I'm really trying to affect some sort of change, right? Like there's no impulse really to have my opinion or myself be heard, because I know that, because I'm comfortable in conversations where I'm challenged on something in like a competitive way, and I'm just okay with being like, oh yeah, you're right, sure, you're right, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, but I started this podcast and we're having these so it's like I'm thinking about, you know when starting the podcast, the idea behind it was, if I'm thinking of 21-year-old love that's in Mississippi, in this tiny college, in a very white space, and not knowledgeable about, a lot of things, but still an observing person. And then, it's just like, what tools could I give that person, and what tools can I extract out of the guests who happen to be my friends, who are doing very different things, and things that are like, um a lot of times not don't have a guidebook for.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the whole thought process of doing this whole thing. And so it's like, that's why, I'm getting a lot of comedians on, because, and I swear I'm going to get to the point. I swear I'm going to get to the point. I bring a lot of comedians on because the thing is that, comedians, and we talk about this all the time, the whole thing is, you have to share your opinion, you're a pioneer, you develop your own personality and character. That's why it's a lot of times it's hard for comedians to be method actors, or things like that, because they can't uh, get themselves outside of their personal brand. You know what I mean? Like, not even, maybe not on a personal skill level, but on how you're perceived level. So that's why I like to bring on a lot of comedians on this show, because you can just think about, like what is the impetus for doing the things they do, because everyone's got a different strategy to get to, I don't know, some nebulous goal, whether it's the X amount of likes, or maybe more likes than that, or X amount of credits, or just some sort of cultural relevance, or a hyper localized community relevance, or whatever, and then, so it's like, you think it's like, to what end do chasing the likes and all this operate? And now I'm going to get to my point, I promise. To what end do chasing these likes operate, when you have such a strong opinion and point of view that you may believe in earnest is worth sharing with people and with strangers, and not even it being attached to your face and name, but that this opinion, this take, this uh, specific observation about a thing needs to be put out into the ether, so that it can go into the free marketplace of ideas, right? So now, here's the point. As a comedian, right, as somebody who's doing something that no one else in your family has done, how do you know, or how do you make a decision between, my goal is getting the most eyeballs, or my goal is turning the most hearts? Because the two are often mutually exclusive.
Yeah. I mean, it's few things. Well, one thing that's interesting that you said is, where it's a question of why, right? But usually both sides of the why, like both sides you presented me with,
Hmm.
still have a bunch of ego involved,
Okay.
right? And that's usually what it comes down to. It's like, I think that if you're somebody that's really has no ego and you have the best like thoughts in the world, I don't know if you would race them to get them out there to the rest of the world.
I don't
I
think you
think,
would either.
yeah, I think you would be comfortable just like dying in your own crib, spreading that thought to the few people who were willing to receive it and kind of just moving on. This like whole like uh my ideas have to be as grandiose as they are presented, you know, that seems to be just attached to just ego straight up. Whether you're trying to be the one presenting it or whether you're just trying to get the message out there, both of them just come from the same place to me, you know? So, like, when you're asking these type of questions, it's like, I think you end up taking the route, like, what are you going to do? Turn hearts or just get eyeballs? You end up kind of taking the route that is best suited for what you have, you know? Like, and you probably want to do the opposite thing, you know? So, somebody that like Kevin Hart, he's probably somebody with just getting the most eyeballs, but in the media, and you see through his comedy what he's trying to do is change hearts, you know,
Yeah.
like through running and through now talking about his relationship stuff and always just being mad vulnerable. Like he's trying to like change lives, right? But really he's like more of a popcorn comedian than a comedian that is,
But
going to change your whole scope. But maybe he's not. Maybe he's able to do both because for a lot of people, he does do both, right?
right, because like when I think about that kind of example, I'm thinking like, sure, he can do both, but is it that he saw the metrics for one and realized that that's a more desirable option to pursue on a personal level, you know, and possibly weighed the pros and cons of how he was perceived if that was the issue, you know, because yeah, sure, there's ego involved, but it's a how you're the ego of how you're perceived, right, in the community, or like the ego of like how you're perceived in a community, right?
Yeah.
There's also an audio podcast too, so but you can watch the video on our YouTube. You want to know why I'm
Nice.
laughing? Um, no, anyways, okay. Before that whole conversation gets obscured, really, I just okay. How do we crystallize this? What goes into the decision making, right? The decision making for, you know, I want to be a comedian. Okay, let me pretend like I'm 18-year-old you or something or whatever, 19, I don't know. I want to be a
Yeah.
comedian. So what do I do? Naturally, like being anything, I would look up any sort of case examples, other people that do it, look up their biographies, what they did and how they did, right? The conclusion I come to is get on stage as much as I can, right? Then there's a whole politics of how do I get on stage? Well, oh shit, there's these communities. You've got to be in different cliques. You got to know different people that have different venues. You could do it on your own and start a show, or all those kind of things. There's a whole different world of politics comes in, and then on top of that, there's the new world of politics where it's like different cliques and how different cliques are perceived and who's cool, who's not, and so therefore who's the different code for it when you get older is who's easy to work with and or who's likable and who's difficult to work with, you
Yeah.
know and people that can be difficult to work with, we can couch that in we can internally couch that in our biases, and we'll just say that they're difficult to work with, but it's essentially the same kind of thing. But like all of those specifications and modifications are just that, modifications and specifications on the initial crux of, I want to be a comedian, right? So what drives that 18-year-old you to say that I want to be a comedian or whatever, right? And with conviction pursue that. And at what point does all the extra politics and stuff wash away that original conviction where it's like, what was that for anyways?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think a few things happen on your journey with comedy, as I'm sure is your journey with probably basically everything, you
Yeah.
know? Uh, One, the closer you get to the goal that you originally had intended, the further you realize the goal is.
What do you mean?
But you're just so happy to be in the position that you're at the moment that you're like, you know what? This is fucking great. You know, like when I started comedy, I think I've told you this. I thought I was going to be selling out theaters in 7 years, right? And 7 years later, I'm nowhere near to selling out theaters. However, I never thought I would be this funny. So I'm just so thankful. However, I do see the amount of work that's ahead of me, right? So goals kind of change as information comes in, as it should. And it's tough to apply a view filled with so much ignorance, even though ignorance is bliss, right? It's tough to give that view too much attention when you have all this new information about the game, you know? And so, there's a few ways to think about this. Yeah, it's like Ben and Jerry's always thinks about like, oh, be the change that you want to see, you know? So that's kind of how they even got into the ice cream business, which is hilarious that, I think about them often when it comes to like shit like this, but I kind of like how they did ice cream, bro, you know? And there's that, but then, there's the other token of like, yo, you have to adapt and survive. So sometimes you get into a thing and you have one kind of aspiration for it, but it accepts you in a different way. And if you don't kind of take that road or figure it out, do a reset or whatever, you know, I guess I've been able to see my vision out pretty clearly. I've never really had to alter it too much from what I anticipated it being. Um, and that's been through like good mentorship,
Mm-hmm.
that's really helped to just stay on the vision. Otherwise, yeah, I think a lot of young artists like get lost, and then they just start like chasing money or chasing followers or like trying to get a job, and it's like you never got into any of those things to begin with. So, I kind of like came to a conclusion a while ago of like, oh, I'd rather just deliver groceries for $600 a week than write for somebody for 4 grand a week, you know?
Yeah.
And that's kind of a dumb conclusion for a lot of people, and I wouldn't expect a lot of people to make that conclusion for themselves. Right. So, it goes to show you it's like not as many people get into stand up for like, oh, I want to be a stand up for the rest of my life. And that's okay. And I'm sure not everybody gets into electrical engineering to be like, yo, I want to be an electrical. Not everybody is just so finite about
Yeah.
all their decisions. So it's like some people are willing to just go other places.
Only the Sith deal in absolutes.
Yeah, exactly, bro. Yo, that's a great, uh,
No,
hilarious
man.
quote.
But yeah, no, like yeah. So that's one thing to really, really think about. It's like what the point? What is the point of doing what you're doing? See, because then, so here's something I wonder about, right? Like, you ever seen that show Extras? with Ricky Gervais?
I've seen a few episodes.
Yeah.
I was never able to
Can
go
I
through it.
spoil the general arc for you and for
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
my two cousins listening? So basically, he's an extra, and then he gets a show off, and then he basically plays a character that has a catchphrase, and he's like a brilliant writer, but he plays the character with a catchphrase. So that's all he's known for, you know. So like, and so you know you see that, oh, maybe he feels unfulfilled, and that he got the validation that he wanted, or he got the validation that he really was seeking, but it was not in the way that he imagined. So like when you're telling a joke, let's say the punchline of your joke is like boop boop boop, right?
Yeah.
Every night, 5 times a night, you tell this joke, boop boop boop.
I
You
hate
get the
that punchline.
laughter. Sure, sure, but you're the one who came up with the joke, and you got a lot of laughter, so you have to do it every night, right? You have to make it better because that joke has got to go on late night because boop 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 destroys crowds. But 5 times a night, every night, all these different clubs, different crowds, maybe people seeing repeats, seeing you do boop boop boop, and you do boop 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 5 times a night every night. Do you really have that kind of enthusiasm for boop boop boop? You know it's a killer. You know it's a killer in your repertoire. Where's the room to grow, right? If you're like if you got this killer golden goose that you are just not emotionally invested in, can you really let it go? Can you let go of
Yeah, I
boop boop
mean,
boop?
personally, I have had a boop boop boop, you know, and I still have one that I don't do. I haven't done in years,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if I ever would do it anymore because I think I've just kind of grown out of it. In the beginning, you know, you hope to
Right.
have a boop boop boop.
What if like what if
That's
you catch fire with boop boop boop? You know, now you're doing boop 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 for years and you're selling out theaters because you're the boop 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 guy. But then, you know, you're at a small venue in Brooklyn, some show that's star packed and it's industry night, whatever, and you do boop boop boop, and then there's a couple of comedians outside, you know, that are talking amongst themselves like, yo, is Danish still doing boop boop boop? Don,
yeah.
yo,
I
and
mean,
it's like, so then how would you feel about that, right? Boop 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 pays for your house and and feeds your kids, but you've lost that sort of perhaps validity you sought that fueled you maybe earlier in your career.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
bro, it's a tough. You're asking a tough question, and I think a lot of comics go through this, and then some comics stay broke until they find their thing that works for them morally, and um, just like financially as well. So this is a thing that a lot of comedians go through, and then some comedians just like, bro, there's comedians making $1 million that don't co-sign what they're doing,
yeah.
and they're delusional about, yeah, my shit is this dope or that dope, you know.
So
So
that's where the disconnect lies for me, right? Right? Is it delusion or is it willful strategy, right? Because it's just marketing
yeah,
to
because
say
they
your
look at
shit
other
is dope.
people, they look at the people that are broke like you're a fucking idiot. You know, like you could easily go make this money. And that's the other thing, man, is one thing can't exist without the whole diaspora of the whole thing, right? So, you know, your shit can't even be deemed dope and futuristic and like the next wave unless all of that other stuff exists of like people making millions of dollars on shit that they don't co-sign and or shit they don't really believe in, you know, boop boop boops and like uh young comedians who are hacks and old comedians who are great but just never popped off. Like all of that needs to exist, and in order for your shit to exist the way it does, right? Because this whole thing is like, there's no this is the best, this is the worst. It's all like perspective gained by watching everything else. So you're like, oh, I've watched 10 specials. Now I kind of got an idea of what stand-up comedy even is. So you have to watch like the thing in order to even get a perspective on the thing, you know? Otherwise, it's you're having a very limited point of view, you know, in terms of trying to create great comedy. So, I mean, that's kind of how I view it, at least. And so I'm always thankful for people who are kind of in it, making a bunch of money and not and doing a bunch of boop 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 shit, because it's like, oh, you know, you can really come in here and expose them with the right work, and that's not possible unless they're doing that, you know. So
But a lot of times I feel like the the guys that booped a decade ago developed this whole different perception of the world, and they have to hold on to the i- influence and relevance that they received from the boop. And so the way that manifests is
yeah, that
in,
is true.
using a younger generation that's figuring out boop beep boop, the new boop 2.0, right? Because it's like at a certain point, when you grow old and fearful, you stop thinking. Risk averseness clouds all your decision making. That's why it's like you see the people that in all these Hollywood stories, the protagonists are always in their early 20s. Why is that? Even the historically accurate ones. Why is it that all of our, all these civil rights figures, everyone's in their early 20s? Because as you get older, you get more risk averse, but that also reflects in your thinking. Oh man, when I was taking risks and I was younger, I came up with boop, and boop changed the world. But now, now they need me to do it again. Do they need you to do it again? But how am I going to do it again? Well, I saw this kid in this Brooklyn venue, and I see that he might be coming up with a boop. So I'm going to bring him under my wing and brain rape him. And you see that a lot, and like,
Yeah, you see that a lot. Yeah, yeah. You know, once you're, because man, if you're making $1 million off of comedy, you're making $1 million off your mouth, and
hmm
you're gonna do anything you can to stay there, bro. It's a good life to be able to make $1 million off your mouth, bro. A lot of people got to work really hard to make that type of money.
yeah,
They got
man.
to fucking, so you're making it off your mouth, and yeah, you've cultivated this thing over years, but you'll do anything to keep it, and as they should. And as a young comedian, you get a little bit of exposure to the audience, and then you got to move on. You know, one of the best things I advice pieces I ever gotten was from a very big comic who's a little bit younger than me. And he said, bro, the best thing you could do, bro, is just don't worry about, yo, I want to open for this guy. Yo, I want to, no, focus on what Danish can do. Focus on what you can do for yourself.
Yeah,
And a lot of people don't do that, you know? So, and a lot of people get caught up. And I've gotten caught up, bro. You know, I've been opening for Mo and Akash for a long time, and those guys are the homies. And you still get caught up in other
yeah,
people's stuff rather than focusing on your stuff, even when they're the homies. So you just have to kind of like reset and readjust and kind of just remind yourself who's the star of your show, you know. So when you do that, it's it's a helpful reminder to just take your shit the most serious. You know, and you should be taking everything seriously, but you just gotta put your things above everybody else. You know, so
Yeah. Yeah, but then, you let doubt seep in. You see people who are good at putting a package together. By package, I mean outward presentation. And
yeah,
you assume that those people know what's good. And the tricky thing about doubt is it allows you to put your boundaries down and let people tell you what they think is best, but it's really coming from just as broken a filter as your own, you know. So
yeah. Well, you also have to like figure shit out like that, bro. You have to think like, how many times has this person asked me a question versus how many times have I asked them a question, right? Like, who's seeking what from who, right? You have to kind of break down the relationship of like, what am I seeking in this relationship? What are they seeking in this relationship? And sometimes it's like they, it's clear they're seeking knowledge from you, and you're seeking to just expand your audience, right? That stuff is clear sometimes. So it's like, okay, like, your shit is tight. Your shit is dope. So okay, great. And that's great, man. A lot of people have great, tight, good shit. Good for you. What are you gonna go do with that? How are you gonna go package it for yourself so you could uh make money and do well for yourself? You know? So that's more about what the goal should be. That's more of like what we gotta start focusing on, rather than, oh, this guy's, he's getting ahead and I'm still here. Okay, great. What are they doing? And then just go do that because you have all the skills. Or are you too lazy? Do they have a thing that they can move more than you? Like, what is it? What, you just got to break it down and then you got to use it.
yeah, that's what I think it is. It's them being able to move something better than you. Because I feel like things on the idea level are just that. You know, the idea level is where everyone wants to live, right?
Yeah,
Everyone
it's hard to
wants to
execute,
live
bro.
on the idea level, but they only actually live on the rhetorical level. Like,
Yeah, but then you a Winklevoss twin,
what
you
do you mean?
know? Like, Zuckerberg gonna come in and he just gonna work, and you might be the idea guy, but that don't discredit Zuckerberg along the way, because Zuckerberg gonna go be the star. Like, you a Winkle, you a person that came up with the idea. You an idea guy, and that's cool too, right? But it's like you got to decide, yo, this is where I'm lacking, you know, and this is what I gotta pick up. Hold on, my door's gonna creak right now. Sorry, I'm like moving around. This is fucking hilarious.
You're
Um,
sneaking in to your house?
yeah, like I just got the first dose of the vaccine today, so I was like knocked out all day. And although I feel
Okay,
fine, I was just like pretty tired.
that's good.
So yeah, I'm excited to just get going again. But like,
Okay, here's what I meant. People want to live in the idea realm. Not here's an idea for a project, right? And people execute. No, people want to live in the idea realm, but they actually live in the rhetorical realm, right? You see the real idea guys, like people that in conversation talk about ideas. There's people in conversation that talk about ideas, there's people in conversation that talk about logistics, and then there's people in conversations that talk about people. You always want to surround yourself with the people that talk about ideas, you
yeah,
know,
yeah, for
because
sure.
the idea people don't live and die by the idea, right? They're factories of idea because it comes from how they perceive. But
Yeah,
so everyone wants to live in in the idea realm, in the idea world. Like people want to be able to have these engaging conversations. We put such a premium on it, right? Like what this show maybe pretends to be. Oh, this is smart talk. Oh, and it's a virtual hangout. So maybe that's desirable to some sort of captive audience. Oh, look, on MSNBC, see how they're using big words and they got suits and they're talking about politics. These are things I can't understand, so I'm gonna look for my champion, right? So people like to look for their rhetorical champion, and then they like to think to themselves that they live in the world of ideas, the idea worlds. And then these rhetorical champions, like the Ben Shapiro guy or all of these, whoever who just basically do what I'm doing now. They just get on a microphone and speak and sow doubt and all of that. But people look at them as champions because they can verbally filibuster anything. And it's just, you're going to confuse that as like, oh, I'm going to take this. I'm going to go ahead and go all in on any sort of logical fallacies because this is an idea guy when really it's just a guy that's using all sorts of rhetorical tricks, right?
Yeah, I
So
mean, it reminds me of this quote. What you're saying is, which I guess I coined. Uzzer told me I coined it, and he's been
it
telling other
reminds me of
people.
this quote I made.
Yeah, I
Just
guess
say
I
the
coined
thing.
it.
Just say the thing.
Uzzer tells me I coined it. Yeah, it's hilarious. Hilarious way to enter this, right? I don't know if I created, but this was a thought of mine once, and Uzzer has created a quote for me now, right? Which
Okay.
is this is another great. See, there's a difference between making the quote yourself and then having a mentor that could be like, that's a fucking quote, and then take that and give it to tell people, oh, this guy came up with, like, I never had to say this, and now I get so comfortable with him spreading this that I'm like, okay, maybe I'll start, because you don't want to have too much ego. You don't want to be like, yo, I came up with this quote. Who says
Just don't call it a
anybody who's.
quote. Just say the saying. And the thing is about people, like people when you're in your 30s or
Yeah, but
whatever.
it's something you say more than once, so you feel like weird saying it without like giving the pretense, hey, this is something that I like thought about. You know what I mean? I
I
don't.
mean, bro, but like, okay, we get the quote,
Wow, we're
here's the
building
thing,
up this quote. This is
right? Here's
hilarious.
I know. Well, I mean, you're the one who said it reminds me of this quote that I guess I thought of.
Yeah, yeah.
But no,
So
but before we get,
hilarious.
it is hilarious, right? Before we get there, like, just think for a second, right? People in your 30s and above or older, you know, you notice when you're having conversations with people do say the same things over and over. They got different coded language that they use, different crutches. Like I say things like language is precision all the fucking time, right? That's like
Yeah,
the whole thing. I'm like, okay, I need to look at these different terms that people use to do things. Be like, people are weaponizing language out here. People have whole think tanks developed into using very specific coded language to marginalize communities and all shit. And my whole fucking thing is how do I take those specific coded words and flip them, right? Like just be like, oh well, doesn't this actually mean this? Well, using this example, wouldn't you fit into the definition of this? Because it's
yeah.
like
Which you can do
pigeonhole,
with literally everything now.
which you can do with literally everything. So
Yeah, this is part of the problem, right?
living in the
So
rhetorical world versus the idea world, right? Now,
yeah,
here's what I want to think. Here's what it is, right? Like, how do you view a conversation, right? How do you view a debate, a political, a debate of ideas? Is it a winning or losing thing? Do you put the
yeah,
winning losing dichotomy on it?
yeah. Or is it just
Why?
advancing the social, or is it just advancing the social
Does it
scope?
need an agenda, right? Like does there have to be a manufactured clash between two ideas, or can two ideas permute together and make a better idea? Or can there be alternative understandings of things? why
Well,
why is it that you have to win an argument or win a conversation? And
I
I'm
think
talking about like,
people, bro, you're these are idealistic because people are too agenda based
yeah,
and people are too selfish to kind of apply. a lot of these ideologies, you know, and it makes it tough to, as a creator, you're like, how can I even coexist? And that's where you have to just kind of create your own, little coalition of different artists that kind of move in a similar way that you do. And it takes, I think it takes years to get that crew assembled. And for some people, it's longer than others. That's where the luck comes in. Do you find your crew that you can kind of build with early or late, right? Um, the but yes, I think about this shit all the time. The quote I always try to
So what
say
is
to
the quote?
others is, everybody out here with no beliefs trying to have opinions, right? And I think it pretty much captures a lot of these people's aura nowadays. You know, they don't really believe in anything. They just see opportunity that they can get some type of social following or clout or whatever with just crafting a great opinion. Opinion that's entertaining, an opinion
Mm-hmm.
that's informative, or just like, to a certain sect that they can appeal to. So it's become a whole bunch of just like check boxes, rather than just free forming and thinking the way people probably did back in the day.
People with the least beliefs have the most opinions.
Yeah, yeah,
That's good.
exactly. Yeah. So, this is kind
That
of
should be
how
the
I
title.
yeah, this is how I kind of sit in it.
You hear that, mother?
And
That's the title.
that's how I think about it. And
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
no, that's like
but it's
that's like a lot of people you see our age,
but I have surrounded myself with, you know people that I like, really love, and who don't operate from that point necessarily. And so, might operate it. Some people might operate from that point more than others. And I still think every relationship I have with everybody, it all relates back to ego,
Mhm.
you know? So I think everybody's trying to figure that out. But I think, this crew that I've assembled is much more aware of that than the average person. That's how it feels, at least. So, you know, I've that's why I pursue the people that I'm around. It's
Yeah.
like I would like to continue down this journey of that, but we all could be wrong, and we all could be thinking that we're all building this crew together, and really we have the biggest egos of them all. So this is like, time will tell, bro, on everything. It's probably the latter than the former, but
Yeah.
who knows?
We were gonna call ourselves the Mafia Clique, but then we called ourselves the Junior Mafia Clique just to keep our egos in check.
Yeah. Yeah, time will tell whose intentions are true and not,
Yeah.
so I wouldn't put too much pressure on us to move so correctly along the way. It seems like we're trying, to do the right things. So as long as we're trying.
I mean, I guess to relate this to the whole theme of this podcast, all this shit, right? Like we've kind of been talking in obscurity, I guess, for the whole however long we've been talking. But to relate
Yeah,
this,
you think it's been too obscure, or you think that people are gonna
maybe it's been too obscure. I feel like it's
you
been
know
too obscure.
yeah, I hope this isn't
Yeah.
like the highest conversation of all time,
I
but
mean, well, obscure in that like you and I want to say a lot of things we can't say, and also there's people that do similar things that may be able to pull specific nuggets from this obscurity that may I guess that's art, right? However you interpret things. And the goal of this whole podcast in general was to provide not necessarily tools, but more raw materials to create your tools for how you navigate. You know, if you're a young brown person, young first generation person, part of the marginalized community, whatever, like you know, you got to see people that are older and having some sort of success or something doing the thing that you want to do, you know, because
Yeah.
if you can't see something, you can't do the thing, right? Like how is it that a lot of these big actors did theater in school, you know, went to polytechnic colleges, all of that, did a lot of training, took a lot of classes, right? Saw it. And those are just different instances in how they see things so that they could do the thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like you have to so like creating a boop boop boop. Let's go back to the boop boop boop.
Yeah.
Creating the boop boop boop. That could be the height of your most pioneer self, right? Your bravest self that goes out into the world and does something so unique that that person came up with a boop 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 that fucked up the world. But now that boop 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 was that person's 15 minutes. So that person needs another 15 minutes or no? Is it an addiction? Is it a necessity really? You know, like what is the necessity at this point?
Yeah, I
You know what I
mean,
mean?
yeah, it's like what do you want more? The new ideas or the fame? You know? And
Like
so it's yeah, it's a good question. It's I mean, it's a tough answer, bro. Some people are gonna want the fame more than the ideas, and some people are gonna want the ideas more. Um,
like I see people doing same joke that they've been doing for a decade all the time. But then in conversation, they're like, yeah, I just try to seek truth. And it's just like, but you're aggressively not growing, you know? So like what is the discrepancy here? And how do we reconcile it?
yeah, I mean, bro, it's up. I think this what you're saying here is just up to the artist. It's like up
Yeah.
to yeah, this is so discretionary on each artist. Some people again, bro, it's like some people's intentions are not as pure as others, and that's
I mean,
like
I'm not making a value judgment on it at all.
no,
I'm
but
asking
and
you what
that's
your
yeah. I think the place that I come from, I try to live in a purity thing of stand up, right? But I've come to learn, like, bro, the people who do things a little bit differently than you, don't judge them because, like, they, no, they don't have the same aspirations you have. Even if sometimes they say that they do out loud, they're saying that because that's just what you have to say, right? So it's like you can't you can't put that on people, your whole life view, your whole world view, your like passion. You can't put that on others, even if they're saying that that's what they're about, because a lot of times it's not, man. And actions are like they speak so much louder than words. You can tell if somebody is like about stand up for the rest of their life. Like you listen to one Daniel Simonson joke, like you're like, oh, this guy like loves stand up comedy, right? So you listen to one Kevin Iso joke, you're like, oh, this guy loves stand up
yeah.
comedy. You listen to like a Bonnie McFarlane joke or like, even a young girl like Natalie, it's like, oh, this person really cares about stand up, Natalie Alcott. So it's like, you could tell very quickly. And I just named four people, and those are on three different levels of where they're at in their career, you know? So, you know, it's just not the same for everybody, these goals. And it's tough when you come from this, like, what you want to say is the right goal, you know? But that's the ego again, bro. It's like, who's to say that your goal is the right goal? It's like maybe getting a job and writing on a show is like the best move ever, for that person specifically. And even maybe for everybody. Who knows? Maybe we should all be just writing on shows, like
Yeah,
so
I mean that's the one thing the robots can't do right now.
yeah, so I'm just saying like that's
That and fraud. Two things that the robots couldn't replace in the apocalyptic future was fraud and comedy writing.
I would say that that
Maybe the better comedy writing of that joke would be comedy writing and fraud.
that's what I believe, bro, is,
Yeah.
And I've kind of like calmed down on
Yeah.
hating, you
Yeah.
know, like yeah, I don't want to hate on different acts anymore. I'm done.
Yeah, that's always been hating on acts is yeah, to me I've never really believed in it. I've believed on hating on people for sure. All the
Yeah,
love
for
that.
sure, bro.
No, but like not hating on acts, of course not, because it's like, I get it, like that's the thing you want to do, but it's when there's a disconnect between when you have the curtains pulled back, that conversation, and the act itself, and the disconnect is that, you know, that you're still trying to sell the act uh behind the curtain as if it's not an act. It's like, bro, we know it's an act. That's why it works. But it's like, like afterwards, there's always that disconnect. That's what I think the hating comes from. Not like hating on the act. That's just dumb.
Yeah. Yeah, and just hating on people's choices and the way they navigate. I don't care, man.
Yeah.
I want everybody to do whatever the fuck they think are opportunities or whatever. Go after it. So it's that has helped me calm down my, you know, just any kind of resentment I have. It's kind of open up the more of the love scope of comedy, and that's kind of where I live at, and that's been much more beautiful than the opposite. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Living in the world of ideas and not the world of
Yeah, I don't
reality.
have time to think about,
You
and
have
then
to
anytime I
operate.
do think about people, I just think about how much like I just think about the people I really fuck with. And I
Yeah.
just think how much, I stopped thinking about the people I felt in competition with. I stopped thinking about them
Yeah.
not just negatively, just
At
overall.
all. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Same.
I can't tell you how little I've thought of certain people that I used to think about all the time.
I
It's like,
used
oh man.
to I used to have all these like introspective tools. I used to do this thought experiment every year or so where I think back on like what month I'm in right now, right? And I think back the last year this month, 2 years ago this month, and 3 years ago this month. And I would think back, what was the big pressing anxiety thing on my head at that time, right? What was my most salient issue? And I I try to do this thought exercise maybe once a year, thing like that. You know, it helps me because it's like, yo, those things were never important that were the
Yeah.
most important at the time. And then it also helps me create I have this other tool, introspective tool, that hopefully maybe this might help my two cousins that are watching. But this other introspective tool where I'm never gonna let that joke go, by the way. Where you know, if you're going through a moment of extreme joy or pain or whatever, you try to really observe that moment. And I think I might have talked to you about this before, probably on this podcast. You observe that moment, right? You observe the smell, you observe the sights around you, you observe what you're tasting, you observe what you're listening to at the time, certain music. Maybe you repeat. What I do is I repeat a certain song over and over and over and over so that it codes whatever emotion I'm feeling at that time into that song, so that I create for myself a nostalgic trigger. So it's like, let's say I go through.
Wow, you do that purposely?
Yeah, I've been doing that since like
I think I've been
law
doing that
school.
unconsciously.
I've been doing that since law school on purpose, and which was like in 2009. And I've been doing that just like, oh, if I'm going through something, because at that point in time my life was radically changing, constantly. So it was just like, if I'm going through something, I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna listen to this song over and over and over. And right now, uh, I don't have running water, and I have to remember this feeling, and I feel very vulnerable and powerless. But I have to remember this feeling because I'm not going to always be this way. So I'm going to listen to this song over and over and over. I'm going to eat this food over and over and over. So that 5 years down the line, when I got my shit together and I can't even remember what it was like to feel powerless like this, I can eat that food, those ravioli, those spaghettios that I got from the dollar store. I can eat those and I'll remember, and then that will refresh my perspective, because I need to always be reminded what I'm doing,
Yeah.
because otherwise I don't know what I'm doing.
Mm, that's really interesting. Yeah, I've
Mm.
always been playing songs like that just subconsciously. Like I would just do it.
Mm-hmm.
But they do, if I play Mask Off, I think of my first tour,
Yeah.
which was like very special to me. And yeah, just like I could think of straight up the road, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that I was on when I'm playing and the emotion that I felt. Yeah, it's really fun to have that
Smell,
experience.
smell is maybe a better trigger than music, but same kind of thing,
Oh
right? Code
wow.
in a different spells. Cook a certain thing, eat a certain food, you smell a certain thing, you know, light a certain candle during that time. Create nostalgic triggers, right? You're going through an intense thing. And one thing that I noticed that did for me was that it helped me process a lot of things, because it was just like, yo, these are all temporary things. I've got these two introspective tools that I use where I think back to what was the most salient issue, and it makes me realize that it wasn't really that important. And then two, I also have these nostalgic triggers so that I can literally live like a four-dimensional being and access my past. You know what I mean? To gain perspective for my future. And so it's like, I think about shit like that. And it's like, these are like little introspective tools you know, that you can use, help you form opinions and that kind of things, because, you know, everyone's perception changes as you grow. And you always want to deny it, but like risk averseness fucks your shit up. Risk averseness is the riskiest thing ever. Like, don't take the risk
Um,
of being risk averse, because then you'll risk your ambitions.
so funny, man. My boy went through something tragic this week, right?
Damn.
Long time homie. And, it was a death and it kind of affected everybody. It's just really funny, not funny, but it was really eye opening hearing him talk because I went to go see him last night. And the things, because he's such an accepting person, and everybody always wanted to be like him. We're talking like a guy that became a doctor at 27, but also was one of the coolest kids in his high school as a brown kid that didn't have many brown kids. Like, was this awesome breakdancing kid, got, like all the girls liked him, was a good looking
Yeah.
kid, but also just sacrificed all that, became a doctor for his family and did it, like had the brain to do it too, right? So, he's naturally just received like a lot of hype his whole life, right? And you see how the hype just kind of like bothers him now, because he's like, man, like, and honestly, it makes him even fucking cooler to me, because it's like, bro, like that shit, that stroking the ego thing, it's so whack
Yeah.
because, like, you know, people stroke your ego, but it's not for the reasons that you think that it is for. It is rarely as genuine as it seems. And
Yeah.
it's like, that's why that, and he just like become kind of allergic to this whole thing. And it was so interesting because here's a guy that only got that his first 20 some years of his life, 30 plus years of his life, right? So I was like, man, it, people really do grow and change, and kind of what their value systems change and they evolve. Like, I felt like he had evolved, you know, of
Yeah.
like, I don't even, like, I don't really want to fuck with people that live on this ego stroking world, because they're
I mean,
stroking egos
if you
about
think about
things.
ego, right? Ego, like, that's literally the easiest hackable exploit in people.
Yeah.
Structuring, you know, hackable exploit all the way. How do I get to this person? Tell them they're smart. How do I radicalize a whole population in rural America? Well, I tell them I love them and I tell them they're smart. You know, that's all. That's all it takes. Got to stroke the ego, especially if the ego is under attack. You just stroke it. And
Yeah,
then,
it was really, bro, it kind of impacted me way beyond, I'm even surprised I'm able to talk about it 24 hours later. And I think I'm not putting it the way I would like to. Like, my thoughts have not even began to form on this, right?
yeah.
But it was very impactful, the conversation. And it just made me think, about how bad ego stroking is. He even quoted like the Prophet Muhammad, like, I forgot the exact quote. So I will tell you, I'll tell you offline. But the quote was, so I forgot the
Was it something that you came
I,
up with?
I only
I'm
remember my
fucking with you.
exact
I'm fucking with
quotes.
you. I'm fucking with you.
I only remember my exact quotes, which I have a few. You can reference them at danishmaqbool.com. But the Prophet Muhammad's, his was
They're in my senior yearbook.
he said something like, "Don't compliment the next man unless you have to," or something like that.
Hmm.
Something along those lines.
Yeah. Praise is
Maybe
unnecessary.
maybe have to or need to unless it's necessary. It was something in that framing, you know. And I thought that was so interesting compared to how some people operate, you know.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that my other boy said, he was like, yeah, because, when you're complimenting somebody, especially in a group, you're putting somebody else down and you don't even think about that,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
why it's
So
always
this
fun to compliment people in groups because you're putting the other people down.
and so this thing that comedians do when you're in a group afterwards and somebody comes up to one person and says, yo, good set, we're not acknowledging that you're saying, yo, you're better than everybody else here, in my opinion. Right?
But then,
And
but
that's
then, but then we get
yeah,
back
and
to
there's
the
that whole
whole
other
thing.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
the subjective shit again. Like,
No, I'm saying, yeah, in my opinion, it ends up with
right.
no, it's just like there.
Like, is there a such a thing as winning an argument? Is there such a thing as a comedian that's better than another comedian?
No, yeah,
What are the metrics,
I agree with you on that. That's fuck metrics or anything like that. But I'm saying that's just like,
I actually call them fuck metrics.
but I'm just saying, like, people do with just a little comment like that. You see, people are always constantly putting each other down
Yeah.
when they're giving others compliments. It's like a secret way of the human interaction, you know?
That's one thing the robots can't do.
Yeah, yeah,
The third thing,
yeah,
comedy writing, fraud, and passive aggressiveness
yeah. Can you put someone else down by giving someone else a compliment?
does not compute.
Yeah, yeah. Can you fuck someone else's day up by just telling their significant other you look good, because that means that they don't look good, you know?
Requires a lot of complicated human brain mechanisms to do that kind of shit. Boston Dynamics can't do that.
Yeah. So that I thought that shit was like,
They can't. They can shoot you, but they can't give you trauma with words.
I thought it was so interesting, man. Like, that's funny. That's funny.
Yo, that's the sketch.
Yeah.
You create robots that can traumatize you with their words.
Shit is funny, bro.
Skynet.
Shit is funny. It's funny.
That is funny. Or maybe it's not. I mean, it's like late at night, and we're recording this on a whim.
No, I think it is funny. It's hilarious.
I don't know. I have that tendency. Let's I have that tendency to deflate things that I say.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
I don't know if
bro,
that's like a first generation thing. You
it
know what I
is,
mean?
bro. It is. It's a first generation thing. It's a lack of self confidence. You know, it's the reason why we laugh when it's like, yo, I came up with this quote. White motherfuckers would have never laughed in that
It would
situation.
be like, oh yes,
Yeah, yeah. They would
what's it
have
called?
never, they wouldn't even have thought about laughing in that situation. Right?
Oh, you
So,
came up with that? Whoa! Wait,
yeah.
word?
So, we live with that, but I think that kind of adds to who we are. And we have to constantly kind of, as white people who do that, probably have to constantly check, like, yo, am I being original enough or this and that? The people who are really on their shit, I'm sure they're checking all the time, like, yo, this is the thing I have to check for. And then we have to check for, yo, am I being too hard on myself? You know, not if I'm being
I've
like,
never worried if I was ever being original or not. That's never been a concern. Like I've
yeah,
never even had to think like that.
yeah, we've never had to think like that. We're just like worried about, yo, am I just being too hard on myself? Which is not even,
Can I
we don't
live?
even get,
Shit.
we don't even worry about it. But that's what we should be worrying about, you
Hey,
know?
inner self. Can I live? What's going on?
Yeah, yeah. And,
Give me a break, dog.
white people are better at not being too hard on themselves, just because, like, I think how things transpired in history,
Yeah.
they don't really have to be too hard on themselves. Like, and then they're able to live more freely, and then you're able to execute a lot better when you're able to do that. So there's like a thinking advantage there if you allow it to be.
Yeah.
Like one time, man, we were in a theater and there was nobody. It was the Mindy Kaling movie that came out. It was like the late night. I think it was called Late Night. And we were in the movie and nobody was in there. And it was like five of us. It was like five brown people, right? And we're in there and my boy just starts like rolling a joint, you know, and this is like a like a professional, like not a fuck boy, right?
Up until
And
that moment.
yeah, and rolling a joint, and we're like, I'm like looking around, nobody's in there, and he's like, bro, a white guy would do it, and then we all just lit it, bro, and we smoked it,
Why
and it
can't we
was
do that?
yeah, it was fine, you know, it
That's
would
so funny how for that story you specified what movie you were watching.
yeah. We all, and
It was
honestly,
absolutely unnecessary
we
information.
thought the movie was well. I think that I was gonna add. I thought the movie was great. I don't know if that helped.
Okay. Okay.
You know,
Well, it's on Amazon Prime now, so I'm sure it did fine.
yeah, I liked the movie, so I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
this was it was a awesome movie theater experience. You know, but I don't think I was so hesitant to do it just as a brown kid. So you know,
Yeah, I mean, we don't have that. We don't we don't tiptoe the line. We kowtow. We don't tiptoe. We kowtow. You know, that's the problem. And I talked to like Samir about this a lot. And, Osama and all this. Like, what is that impulse to kowtow, and why do we all have it?
yeah,
Because that's irreconcilable with that dangerous ego that is coupled with that feeling. And it's like, how do those two states of mind, states of mind, coexist in so many people? And
hmm,
they're like, it doesn't make sense, man.
yeah. I mean, I guess it's a complexity that we do live with, but it's the complexity I would take over like the complexities that other communities have to deal with. I think it's one that's like, because also we've dealt with it for so long, so we've been kind of knowing how to navigate it. Um, it doesn't make sense for our people as a whole, but as an individual, I feel like I'm able to kind of figure out my role and just how to do what I got to do. And I'm still kind of learning how I want to incorporate culture fully and everything.
Yeah.
Um, but I think overall we just have like, especially as Americans, we have cookie cutter problems culturally compared to other cultures.
Yeah.
You know, which is nice. It's like it is really nice. It got a little rough there for a while after September 11th, but I think things have navigated back to like kind of safety for us. So I worry a little bit
I mean,
about,
safety, yeah.
but yeah, I worry a little bit about.
About being a victim of a hate crime, or your
No, yeah,
family being a victim of a hate crime.
yeah,
That's
I worry a little bit about that stuff for sure. And I think eventually, yeah, we have a hijabi in the house, and so I think she's gonna end up having to deal with something at some point, for sure.
yeah.
But uh, you know, it gives us an edge as a
But
people,
but
and
when
it's
we seek seek safety, part of the implicit bargain of seeking safety is the gradual sacrifice of the self identity, you know, of
yeah,
the creative, unique ambition, of the putting yourself out there. Even it's the suppression of the internal and external voice.
well, what we have right now, love, is this is the race of the vaccine versus the new strains, right? So right now, as
Wait, are you
America is,
creating a metaphor, or are you just talking about really what's happening?
no, but yeah, a metaphor. But that's I'll tell the people know what's going on. Of right now, we're rolling out vaccines, trying to get them ahead of the new strains, right? And right now, we are trying to spread as many brown people in populations in America, you know, before uh we all dilute our whole culture, you know. So that's what's going on. We're fucking rapidly expanding here in America. We try to make a mark, and hopefully we get there before our culture is diluted. It's a race. We'll see who wins. Is it gonna be us, the vaccine, or is it gonna be the other strains? Or yeah. So we'll see, bro. This is the metaphor we gotta end on.
No,
Come on, this works.
such a bad metaphor.
It works.
It doesn't.
It works.
No, it doesn't.
It's so stupid.
It's the worst metaphor ever. Okay.
It's so stupid.
Danish Maqbool, everyone.
Guys,
Yo, DMAC1 at DMAC1 on social media. What else? What else? What else? Like, what do you want them to know about you? What do you want my two cousins to know about you? Well, one's already calling you.
I have a podcast called the DMAC Hour, which I did the first season of last year, and we are ramping up to do the second season soon.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and it's gonna be a whole different format and everything, and vibe and whole
Yeah. So hold on. Sorry, I got a call from my boy. Yeah, it's about to be a whole different vibe. It's gonna be really dope. So I'm really excited for that. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. DMAC Hour, and then DMAC1 on all shit. And Clubhouse. Come see me on Clubhouse. Danish Maqbool on Clubhouse. Follow me. We got some dope shit going. I got a roast room on there. Shit is wild.
Yeah, so Danish has really been taking to it on the Clubhouse.
Yeah.
So he's been pushing.
Yeah. MC Hammer followed me yesterday on Clubhouse. Hilarious.
Oh, for real, dude?
Yeah,
MC Hammer's in like grad school right now, right?
So he's like really sharp.
He's like some STEM something.
Even when he speaks, you're like, oh, this guy. I don't know if he knows what he's talking about, but he sounds like he does. So
No, like for real. I think he's in like some like graduate program for some STEM something.
He seems like a really smart guy. For sure.
That's fucking dope, man. Yeah, so follow Danish. Yo, what a very obscure conversation we had. This is gonna be really weird to listen to again when editing, but I think it'll be good.
Yeah, it would be cool. Let's see how your audience reacts. Let me know. I'm interested as well.
I mean, shit, they'll call you before they call me. Apparently.
Yeah.
Nobody calls me.
To see if that one guy reaches out again.
They don't reach out to me. Hey, one guy, you could reach out to me, man. Tell me to keep going. No, that's too much to ask. All right. Yo, thank you for giving me your time today.
Yeah, and, for sure, bro.
Hit me up whenever, dog.
Okay, bro.
Thanks for watching. Check us out at returnthejewels.com or on social media at returnthejewels to watch more videos. You can subscribe right there, or you can watch a random video right here. Like, share, and subscribe. Tell all your friends.